We're testing. Everybody welcome, but not really. Be here when we stop testing. I should keep talking, okay?
Keep talking to make sure we have good volume.
Okay. Is there good volume? Anybody, if you don't think so, let us know. Especially Eileen, who has been coaching us all along.
Can you hear her? Folks who are online, can you hear clearly? Eileen says it sounds good.
Good.
So I think our test is successful. Mary says the same.
Oh, good. Mary, who began all this.
Okay, we start in 4 minutes.
Okay. I got my papers all ready. I won't have to shuffle them. Joni, should I give you the painting?
Sure. Unless you want me using this.
Yeah.
I'll use this.
Whatever is easier for you.
Kathy Olson can hear you. Dear Hedy.
Oh, Kathy.
And they say you look good and sound good.
Joni and I got our second shots. And because of that, the first thing we said, we can get our hair done. Because mine is a disaster.
So while we're testing, Willie is chewing his toy under the table. Are you hearing it? Should I excommunicate him or is it all right?
If we can keep him, I'd love it.
Kenny says yay. And Johanna and Rona are here.
Hi there.
You can hear Willie. Okay, Willie is going.
Oh, Willie.
Come on, Willie.
If you give him cookies, it might work. You could let him into my room.
Never. Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay. We are so prepared.
Eileen says Hedy looks great and Willie is fine. Kathy says you look as beautiful as ever.
Wait till I get my hair done.
Kathy says it's the inner beauty that counts.
Thank you.
And Johanna says so wonderful to see you.
Well, I'm just talking. Let me just say something. Be in touch with me, but never through Messenger or Facebook, because then I can't answer you. Are we ready?
Julie Williams says great to see you.
Julie, remember you have to see me soon because I have your picture.
And we're ready in 2 minutes.
Okay.
But talk about your shot and how you're feeling.
Oh, I would love to talk about the shot because the people at the Javits Center were awesome. And I'm going to just mention 2 women. Everybody was wonderful. But those 2, one of them was dancing when we came. And so we danced too. And then we got the shot. And that was Latifah Brown and Katura. And I said I would mention it because they changed the feeling with that dance.
I closed the windows even more tightly just now because of the wind howling. And
Is it still howling?
It's howling, but not as loud here. Tammy says, Happy Monday. And
Oh, Tammy, your book. I can't wait.
And Eileen says, glad to hear you're both vaccinated and you got to dance. Excellent.
Yes. Joni's going to minimize her talk because she's been coughing since the shot.
No, since
No.
well before.
Well, before.
Okay, Mom, you are on.
Okay. Everybody, welcome. This is going to be a very special one. Maybe they all are going to be special, but this one is going to deal about Vienna. And thanks to friends who are obviously brilliant, and that's Hernan Poza and Christopher Zalig. I'm able to connect to Vienna, and that's today. Okay, so let me begin right now. First, we'll begin with the temple. Okay, Joni will show you the picture, but it's all on my wall.
Okay, they're looking at it, Mom.
Oh, as you're looking, Professor Wolf from the museum was the one who led me on a tour. He took us on a tour to the Elder Street Synagogue, and at that time it looked as if everybody had just walked out. There were still prayer books there, and it looked old. Afterwards, they began to renovate it. I haven't been there since. I've seen pictures, but I'm glad that I saw it before the renovation. And by the way, we made a signed and numbered limited edition print, which you'll be able to get someday, but not until this period of isolation is over. When the pandemic is gone, then we can show you and offer for sale the prints of a few pieces, and this is one of them.
And we're laughing because before you called it the pandemonium.
I know. Okay, now this is more important than anything for me. The man walking into the temple is Mr. Markowitz, and he's the shamus. The shamus is a caretaker, and he became such a friend. He would come and talk to me all the time when I was painting. And then he disappeared. And a long time later, he came back again. And I said, Mr. Markowitz, what happened? And he said, you know, I'm afraid they wait outside to get into my apartment. The young thugs. And one day I had to open my window because it was so hot. It was so hot and the window was stuck, and I forced it open to get some air, and they came in. And I don't want to tell you what they did, but it was very dangerous for me. And I looked at him and I said, Mr. Markowitz, why didn't you call the police? And he looked at me and he said, the police? If I called the police, those people would kill me. I don't move. I just stay quiet. And I hope they go away. And it made me realize that everybody lives in their own world. And if we don't speak and find out, then we would never know the fear that people have, the justified fear. As a matter of fact, I've been finding out that people take for granted that all of us feel what they feel. And part of the business of painting that I'm doing and the talking of Facebook is to make you realize, become a friend, be a person, be involved. Let me go further. The next thing is, I'm going to show you a drawing of my son. Remember the drawings that we do of people with masks on? Look at the eyes. From now, all your eyes talk, because your mouths are shut. And some or other people, when their faces are shut off, they begin to talk. They feel that they are not seen, and so they're not embarrassed. So I'm going to tell you what Kenny and I spoke about when he took me to take my shot. And on the way back, we drove where I had never been before. I hadn't been to New York City for so long. At least a few years, 3, 4, 5 years. And never driving through the city at night when those big buildings suddenly have appeared. We drove through a magic world, big buildings all lit up. And if you look down, the stores, incredible, because it was a Fifth Avenue world. Going from the Jacob Javits Center uptown, we saw miracles. And it led to talking. And Kenny asked me questions, and I found myself answering in a way that I had never thought before. The view made me feel it. And I'm going to read parts of what we talked about. I spoke to him about the first time I have thinking time, and how that is leading me to follow thoughts and listen to those thoughts to see where they're leading. Up to now, I would have a thought and deal with it. But now that I'm in quarantine and I don't leave my home and I don't do the normal things, I allow my thoughts to continue into paths where I never gave them time to go before this. And my son and my daughter, with whom I am right now, allow me to drift and to speak. And there Ken was driving me through a magic city with feeling so free because I got my second vaccination. And I was thinking of time. I, as a human being, think of seconds and minutes and hours and years when I think in terms of doing, of achieving, of becoming. And I become impatient because I didn't finish and I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And yet I was created by a universe that has tiny atoms which my eye cannot see, and yet goes into outer space where there are billions, trillions of shapes, perhaps bigger than the earth itself. And I begin to think the time table of the universe is not mine. Why don't I borrow a little bit and begin to look and not say, but this doesn't work? Martin Luther King, who created a miracle, did it by building upon centuries of human beings who were doing the same building. Look at the Greeks. Look at the theories of civilization. Look at cavemen. That didn't happen in 100 years. It didn't happen in a few hundred years. It happened in the thousands. And suddenly we see excavations in Egypt of cities older than our recorded history. What if I allow myself to think that when I do something, it is only a beginning? Because Facebook itself gave me a voice. I am able to speak today to somebody who's in Sweden, in Israel, in Africa, maybe somewhere in outer space, which can't communicate with me. Maybe they're experimenting the way we are, in equal rights for everybody. I'd like you to help me in those thoughts, because there is so much that lies in front of us, and because we judge by the minute. You know, it took me so long to create the last painting that I did. It took me as a little child to scribble on things. And the wonderful thing about my parents was that they never corrected what I did. They just let me draw. And then next week, because I will still talk about Vienna next week, I will tell you about a teacher in Vienna who taught me to love drawing. But when I did the first painting on Orchard Street, somebody said, "Will you put me in?" And I said, "Yes, but only if you turn around. I don't know how to do tiny faces." It was then that somebody said to me, "Your canvas is too rough. If you paint a nose and it's on a bump, the whole nose changes. You got to get a different kind of canvas." And I had to learn that canvases were made in Brooklyn. And I went to Brooklyn and I got rolls of canvas. And now I stretch every canvas. I have it stretched. I'm not that strong. Though when Eric was alive, he was, and he stretched them. When it came to brushes, somebody said, "You do miniatures, but you do them with real brushes. Don't do that. Find out the tiniest brush you can find." And I did. And I ordered them specially from Bricks. It is Bricks, isn't it? Bricks. Whatever. At 91, I'm allowed to make mistakes. But just lately, they put out an advertisement of a brush that spots. In other words, I could put a nostril in or a highlight in the eye, which I couldn't do before.
Kenny says blick.
Blick, thank you. I just got an order from them. But my memory is 91 years old. Okay.
Do you want to hear who just joined?
I'd love to.
So, Elena Taylor, Tammy Smith, Hardev Mangat, Jeffrey Kisman. Oops, wait. Kent Almqvist.
From Sweden.
Julie Williams.
Julie.
Jesse Page says, "I love you."
Oh, I love him so. He's the maker of my wonderful website.
Tammy says, "That smile. I hope they can see that smile in outer space." Rosa,
Tammy and Tracy are retiring. And I am hoping that they become travelers and come here because I can't wait.
And Rosa Geller says, "Thank you, Hedy, for being alive." And that's who's here.
I would love to keep on being alive. Thank you. Thank you for being alive. Okay, so I spoke about the universe. I would like now to speak about Vienna. I'm going to read it because I need you to know Vienna. I didn't know how much it has shaped me until we went there a few years ago, because Eric and the kids said, "You've got to come to terms with Vienna. You loved it once. What happened for that brief period of time should not make you change in what Vienna was to you. You've got to go back and release the anger you have." And we went back, and the anger disappeared. Let me read this to you, though, about Vienna. I want you to know the Vienna I grew up in. When I was 8 years old, Hitler came. And 6 months of hiding after that. And when I became 9, we just reached Panama and escaped. Okay, let me put my glasses on. This is an important story. The year 1938, Vienna, Austria. My brother and I walked to school together every weekday morning, past apartment buildings which were similar to ours. It was a happy walk. We greeted neighbors and they greeted us. I was 8 years old and Richie was 10 and a half, and our favorite part was to go past the building around the left-hand corner of our street. There were 2 and sometimes 3 young women waiting in the upstairs window to wave at us. Once they even ran down to give us chocolates. This was our Viennese neighborhood before Hitler came. There came a day when Nazi soldiers went to apartments where Jews lived, forced the men out who lived there, and took them away. One of the young women who waved at us saw them walking into our building, called her boyfriend, who was a uniformed soldier, and said, "Quickly, go into that building. Look for any apartment door that was smashed, broken. Ask the woman what her husband's name was, what he looks like. Tell her that you are a friend of the boy and girl who always greet us on the way to school. And stop all the groups which capture men and find him. Bring him back." He must have loved her, because he took this dangerous political step and risked his life. When they smashed the door, quickly my mother put my brother and me into a closet so that we would be safe, and my father went peacefully so that they would not take her and us. We had been prepared before this and knew that resistance could be worse. But the ending of this story is different from most. The girl's soldier friend went from group to group of arrested men, asked for Jacob Kellman, found him and ordered him to come at once. He walked the streets with my father until he felt safe to tell him who he was. At night he sheltered him in a friend's apartment, even though both knew that if found out what they were doing would be severely dealt with if discovered. In the morning they brought my father back home to us. A short while later, our visas from Panama arrived, and we survived to tell you this story. I need to tell you this before I tell you anything else about Vienna. I am going to be speaking about Vienna again next week because so many things happened when we visited there. I need to tell you, first of all, there's a reason why I paint what I paint. And why, now that Facebook has given me a voice, it is the meaning of my speaking. Suddenly I have a voice. You know how I got that sentence? I'm a volunteer in the prison world. At first it was Sing Sing, and then it became a rehabilitation group called the Fortune Society. And they had a fundraiser. And if you remember, during the early times of the 60s and 70s, well, things were held in garages everywhere. And this was a garage. And we sat in the front row, which I was allowed to be in, were seats from cars, which had been thrown away, I guess. And the head speaker was a black ex-prisoner who now was an opera singer. Joni, do you remember his name? I don't, but it doesn't matter. What matters is what he said.
Yeah, Charles Dutton.
Charles
Dutton.
Duncan.
Dutton.
Dung.
Dutton.
Dutton.
Yeah, and he was a Shakespearean actor.
He was a Shakespearean actor. I will never forget. He said he was in prison often. In those days, being black already gave you that guarantee that you'd end up in prison for something which a white person would get a ticket for. At any rate, I'll never forget. He said somebody slid a script of a Shakespearean play. I believe it was Othello, but he did play Othello in opera. And he read it. And he stood there and he screamed into the air, "I had a voice. Suddenly I had a voice." And when I speak to you, do you know what I feel? I have a voice. Please listen. Let's change the world together. But I would like to ask you, you see, part of my prison work and counseling and my teaching and Facebook comes because I was rescued by the enemy and saved by Panama. I have to spread it out. I have to make my life count for you. What I would love is, instead of sending me notes, which I cannot answer because you send them from social media, and I can't expose my life that way without feeling safe. Send me a note of what you have done that you remember, that changed one life. Giving comfort to somebody crying. Buying a cup of coffee for a homeless man. Picking up some garbage that somebody could fall on. If you could do that, and Andrew Glick, who was my student, my art student when he was about 6 years old, when you wrote to me from Texas, you have a restaurant, the 2nd Avenue Deli, established a way of giving food to anybody who came in who was homeless. Glick, Andrew Glick, I know you so well. Let me know what you do, because you're the type who makes the world better. How much time do I have?
You've got 7 minutes. Should I give you some more messages?
I'd love it.
So a couple of people have joined us. Stephen Schlussel is watching. Marilu Bilgray de Rodriguez. Eileen Cutler said Herbert shared such beautiful photos and videos from your Vienna trip with Eric. Laura Silver says, I hear you, Eddie, loud and clear. And Julie Williams says, your voice continues to inspire all of us.
Okay. Who was the first name?
Stephen Schlussel.
Yeah. Stephen is one of the most wonderful people. He's a neighbor. And he takes care of me. And so do my neighbors upstairs who have a snowblower. So I live in a neighborhood of miracles. All of you who don't know what to do to make the world better, bring somebody a bagel, like Steve does for me. Actually, he always brings 3. We don't speak to people. We don't know people. Recently, I spoke to somebody who has become a dear friend, whom I met many, many years ago in the Lower East Side. And we spoke the other day, and we compared notes. Since he worked in a street where crime abounded, the Orchard Street that I love had pickpockets. When clothing was hung from stores, kids would run in and grab them. But that's not the Orchard Street I knew. The moment I sat down with the canvas, the dangerous kids would come running to see what I'm doing. And I would say, do me a favor. My eyes don't see that well because I'm sitting so far. Would you go over to that area which I'm painting and tell me what color is that line? Immediately they belonged. And we became friends. And the painting was usually so ugly at the beginning that they didn't know what I was doing and they felt pity for me. Later on, when things began to look like what they were supposed to, they started to protect me. If I would have been a shopkeeper, knowing that any moment they would grab that coat and run away with it, the world I would know would have been different. So my advice to all of you is, look innocent. You don't have to be old like I am now, because I was not old at that time. That still doesn't mean that people will love you. But when I first sat down on Orchard Street, in jeans and a flannel shirt and all my stuff with a knapsack, I looked like a hippie. One of the people who ultimately became a customer also, when I did his store, he said, you know, when you came, I worried. I thought, oh my God, the street is going to be overrun by hippies. There's one hippie comes, they all come. And they didn't speak to me until they realized there were no other hippies coming. Because sitting on street corners is exhausting. And very few people would. So I think my time is up. But when I see you next week, I'm going to talk about Vienna. I'm going to talk about Herbert Neusiedler and Beate and these wonderful people whom I met there, who changed my life and still do. And I'll tell you, when people say to me, how do you consider yourself? Who do you belong to? I'll say everything shaped me until I came to America. And I saw in 1948, and I saw that I would have to tell people they can't sit next to me because they were not white. And I became an American when the world changed, when people from other colors and other nationalities and other accents were allowed to have coffee with me in a cafeteria. I have great hope for the world. Help me shape it.
So let me tell you what a couple of different people said. Eileen said, the gift of a bagel can go far. Julie Williams said, the great activist Pete Seeger believed that the world would only be saved by millions of people doing millions of small things. Arthur Ashe, a quote from Julie Williams, is start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Joanna Schneider said, thank you as always, we can make a change in the world. And Laura Silver said, I think this may be the start of the international Bring a Bagel movement.
I love you all. Thank you.